Welcome to Mishnah study, Masechet Sanhedrin, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Gimal. Over here in this Mishnah, we're continuing discussing when three judges, three dayanim are needed. And interestingly enough, these first words of the Mishnah are really going to have a lot to say about them. So I'm just going to jump into it and we'll go as we go along. Simichat zekenim, right? The simicha of the zekenim, right? When the zekenim do simicha, literally, like when they put their hands, right, on something. So most Mefarshim explain that we're talking about the simicha, placing your hands on the par, right, the par hatata kahal, right, when if there's the whole nation sin, so you have to put pressure and do vidui on the ox, on the bull. Harambam though has a very different perush, and that is when we are appointing judges, right? Simichat sekenim, when we're appointing judges, right? We have to put vayismoch et yadav alav vayitzavehu, right? It's based on the pasuk in Sefer B'Midbar, so you have to actually put you have to put their hands on them, and you don't actually have to put your hands on them, but it's basically when you want to establish simicha, right? Appointing the next generation of dayanim, right? How do you do so? So you don't actually have to put your hands on top of, the new student who's becoming a judge. Rather, he has to say to be ploni atasamuch, right? And from there on, he's allowed to judge in dinei knasot, any type of, monetary, knas. Penalties. He's allowed to go ahead and judge. And when he's called a judge, he's called, Elohim. Now, Hanabam brings up a few important points over here, which actually led to a major debate between the Hachamim in Tzfat versus the Hachamim in Yerushalayim. Rabbi Yaakov Berav in Tzfat, he was the rabbi of Maran Rabbi Yosef Karo. He actually gave smicha to Maran Rabbi Yosef Karo. He was one of the four Talmidim that Rabbi Yaakov Berav gave smicha to, and the chief rabbi in Jerusalem at the time, which was not the center of Limud Torah like Tzfat was in the 1500s. The Maharal Bach actually really opposed this, and Rabbi Yaakov Berav actually brought Harambam over here as a proof that we can reestablish semicha even in today's day, right? So Harambam actually points out a few things over here, and he says that you can only do semicha in Eretz Yisrael. Right, so this was actually in the 1500s, the time period when a lot of people after the Inquisition actually moved to Eretz Yisrael, and the center of Torah was in Tzfat. From so many places in the world, really some of the greatest Talmidei Chachamim, Judaism has seen, were living there. Okay, so it has to be done in Eretz Yisrael because en smicha b'chutz la'aretz. Now, once you have smicha in Eretz Yisrael, you can judge dinei knasot in chutz la'aretz, right? But the Sanhedrin itself, right? You have to have smicha in Eretz Yisrael. Because we have Sanhedrin noheget ba'aretz u'b'chutz la'aretz, right? That's an important point. Now, whether you need to have three people who are simuchim appoint the next person or not is a safek, right? Rambam says it's safek, and he goes, it seems from the Talmud that you need to have the greatest one of them as a samuch, and two other people could be with him, and then you could go ahead and appoint the next generation. And Rambam says, "Va'ani sover." This is so interesting, right? He goes that anytime if you have a haskama, right? You have the agreement, mikol hatalmidim, right, from all the students, and the hachamim, right, to appoint someone. As the yeshiva, to be the head of the yeshiva, as long as it's done at Eretz Yisrael, you can go ahead and do this, and he's considered a samuch, and he can now go ahead and be somech, right, to appoint other hachamim, judges as well. He actually says if you don't say this, right, then you'll never have a bet din hagadol forever, right? And we know that it's going to happen because the pasuk in Yeshayahu says, "V'ashiva shofetayich k'valishona," so it's going to happen. Now, you may say, oh, wait for the Mashiach. After the Mashiach comes, then we'll have it. He goes, that's not true. Why? Because as we know, as he pointed out, the Mashiach is not going to add any laws to the Torah, right? Not Torah shebichtav, not Torah sheba'al peh. So Rambam says, I hold that the Sanhedrin, right, is going to come back before the appearance, before the Mashiach comes. And this is actually be one of the simanim, right? Only afterwards you'll be called ir hatzedek, right? After the shoftim return, and this will happen when, of course, when Hashem actually, sets everyone's hearts. Everyone, has appropriate deeds. They're performing chesed. They're yearning for the Torah. This will happen before the coming of the Mashiach, right? As we learn from the Pesukim, right? So that's the loaded portion of Simichat Zekenim, the way Hanabam explains it over here, very interesting. And you need to have how many people? Shelosha, right? V'arifat ha'igla, right? Arifat ha'igla. If you find a someone who was killed in between two cities, right? You have to actually kill an igla from the back of the neck, right? And they say that they say certain pisukim over there. So okay, you have to do that with three judges. Bishlosha, Rabbi Yehuda argues and says b'hamisha. He learns it from the pasuk from v'samechu. Samechu is plural. Also zikneh is also plural, right? Samechu zikneh ha'ir, right? So so that has to be 2 plus 2 is 4 plus you can have an even amount, so it has to be a fifth one. That's how Rabbi Yehuda gets to 5. Rabbi Meir says no, I'm not learning from samechu and zikneh. I'm learning from zikneh. Zikneh is 2, right? Zikneh, you have to have two elders plus another one because you can have a beit din shakul. So that's how he gets to 3. Halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Interestingly enough, is it going back on everything over here? It seems like it's going back on Simichat Zekenim also, that you need to have 5. It seems like Rabbi Yehuda has an argument that, but when Hanabam is posek and halacha, he's actually posek that the Simichat Zekenim is with 3 people. Arifat Ha'igla is like halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda with Chamisha. Chalitza u'meunin b'shlosha. When it comes to chalitza, right? If someone, a woman who was married to, her husband died without any kids, then she does yibum to, or basically the brother, one of the brothers does yibum to her and marries her, and we keep the, to keep the family going, right? The name of the older brother going. Now, if she doesn't want to, she could do halitza, right? Where they take off a shoe and she spits in front of it, and she says, I don't want to marry this person. That has to be done in front of 3 people. Me'unim is when when the family, not the dad, right? The dad's out of the picture. The dad died, and some other the family member, the mom, marries off a younger daughter before she was 12 years old. And once she turns 12, she has the option of deciding: do I want to stay married to this person, or do I not? When she becomes of age, and if she wants to do mi'un and say, I'm not going to live with this person anymore, it has to be done in front of 3 people. Ha'ikdeshot b'shlosha, right? If someone makes something hekdesh, right? They donate something to the Beit HaMikdash, to be in front of 3 people. Netareva'i, right? Netareva'i is the 4th year fruits, right? They have to be eaten in Jerusalem. Ma'aser sheni, also ma'aser sheni are fruits of the 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 5th year that are brought to Jerusalem to be eaten. She'en damav yiduim, you don't know the value of it. Let's say they started to rot and you don't know the exact value of how much it's worth. Bishlosha has to be done. Now you figure out the value in front of 3 people, right? You take 3 people who understand the value of what it is. Look at the market, someone who's selling it. That's what it is. Ha'arachin hamitaltelim bishlosha, right? Arachin is if a person says ki alai, I'm going to give my value, and a Kohen now comes to take his erech, whatever he's worth, and he wants to go ahead and give it from mitaltelim, from some of his possessions, right, that he has in his house. He wants to give it. So how do you figure out how much it's worth? So you have to go ahead and you have to actually figure out the value of those possessions in front of 3 people. Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'chad kohen. One of them has to be a kohen. B'karkaot tisha kohen. When it comes to karka, right? If a person now wants to redeem it from his real estate, okay, so he has to do that in front of 9 people plus a kohen, right? As the pasuk mentions, the kohen. Ve'adam kayotze bahem, right? Similarly, if a person says, dami alai, I'm going to give my worth, right? So now you have to figure out how much he's worth as a slave who's being sold in the shuk. And again, with 10 people, one of them has to be a kohen again. We have to figure out what he's worth. Yeah, right, and that's what we mean when we say "Va'adam kayotze bahem," meaning that when we figuring out the value of the person, it's similar to the way we figure out the value of the karka, that it needs to be with 10 people. That's our Mishnah. Interesting Mishnah. The next Mishnah we're going to continue, leading on to capital punishment, which we need 23 people for.